Okay, I think we can start. So yeah, okay. So welcome everyone to here to Madrid, to Spain. I hope you enjoy the beautiful weather and the food, of course. For the ones that don't know me yet, I am Jenny Espina. I'm from the digital cluster of Catalonia. I'm the head of innovation of European. Sorry, I'm the head of the projects of innovation in European. I'm also the communication and dissemination work facilitator of the HESTIA project, and I will be the moderator of this session together with my colleague Laura from REDREAM, who will be moderating the roundtable discussion and conclude the session. Okay, so the objective of the session that is a continuation of the workshop that we celebrated last year in Nice under the framework of the sustainable places. Oh, sorry, I can continue now.
So I will go on. Jamie is not having a good time at the moment, and she asked me this could be the case. So I have not prepared this part, so bear with me. So the objective of this session deals with user outreach and engagement as the key driver for innovation of digital and technology-based demand response solutions, with the aim to frame a good user experience and an effective energy and flexibility performance, which will help consumers engage more in new energy services and overcome the barriers that this brings. This workshop, as Jamie was saying, is the continuation of the one celebrated last year and the year before. We've also been collaborating throughout these years, having different meetings, finding different ways of collaborating under Sustainable Places framework, but also as part of our collaborating activities in each of the projects, with 5 sister projects. So here with us today we have the REDREAM project, HESTIA, HEFLEX, and Center projects. The concrete workshop will offer an overview on experiences from user engagement, with a strong focus on the user involvement in co-creation activities at the pilot size of these 5 sister projects, and highlight key learnings from implemented strategies, tools, and platforms in the form of best practices. To do so, my colleagues representing the projects will present what has been done since September last year and how things are going so far. We also updated what was the situation there, so now we're focusing on the latest results of the projects. So this is just to give you an overview of the good practices that we were just mentioning. So we will start first with the REDREAM project. I won't stop to explain each project, as I know my colleagues will go during the presentation, but I have recycled this introductory presentation just for the audience to picture a bit about each project. So I will give a brief introduction, and then we can go ahead with the presentations. So first of all, representing REDREAM, we have today here Ms. Carmen Valor and Mr. Yona Batnur. Carmen is professor at Universidad Pontificia Comillas here in Spain. She studies consumer consumption and transition in REDREAM project, and Yona is a senior user experience analyst and currently research designer at the Solside. He's actively involved in the qualitative social studies at the REDREAM participants' experience and elaborating potential engagement and user experience UX solutions. So I think I don't know if you want an introduction of each project, or we can have the presentation of them, and then I introduce each project as it goes. I think maybe that's better. So you can go ahead. Thank you.
So we went with this because we have 5 minutes each. We will go very fast over non-important stuff, and then we want to put some key learning, key takeaways, key insights. So our project is a flexibility provision or testing project. It's inspired or informed by service dominant logic. And we created a user-centered ecosystem with different layers, a design layer and a user layer, a social layer and a technological layer. And these are the benefits or the impacts that the project intends to achieve. We test actually two forms of flexibility, implicit and explicit, in 4 demo pilots in Croatia, Spain, Italy, and UK.
Okay, after this brief introduction, also my message will be pretty short, and because we don't have a lot of time, probably we will clarify some things afterwards in our discussion. More or less, my message was about the necessity to create a complex theory of adaptability through the co-creation, through different type of co-creation. So we can't speak only about the co-creation of interfaces that is understood in a classical manner when we're building applications or digital services for energy, for flexibility transition. But in our opinion, it was thinking about three types of co-creation, of 3 steps or circles of co-creation. First type is co-creation of strategy that we done with the partners, with the demo managers, and with all the partners inside the consortium, working on the strategy and proving it with the experience and with the information received from each demo. For example, in March 2021, we organized a 2-hour workshop with all demo partners where we're discussing particularly a recruitment strategy, and after we conducted a co-creation session. The next step can be, just to mention briefly, the next step could be the co-creation of value. That is very important. That can be a circular part of this future theory of the adaptability of the users. So here we are speaking about value and working with the 4 particular archetypes of the users that we encountered during the previous qualitative research conducted inside the REDREAM project. We were thinking about 4 main archetypes depending on the awareness of the users to the flexibility transition, and also 4 archetypes speaking about the relationship of the users with the technology and willingness to use new digital services in their lives. So more or less, it was 4 general archetypes, or 8 archetypes, we can say. 8 in speaking technically, and 8 speaking about awareness of the users. Next slide. And at the end, also, it's important to think about co-creation of interfaces. The classical, I think, in my opinion, the classical user experience conception of co-creation, when we're creating a system of the interfaces with the users, and after realizing different iterations of the interfaces created, also basing the interfaces on the necessities and aspirations of the users too. So also speaking about this step of co-creation of the interfaces, we can say that we can alleviate the anxiety of the users, of techno-pessimism of the users, introducing the future potential interfaces that we're going to use for the transition, for the flexibilization of the energy grid or energy system.
So one of the main learnings that we got at this stage of the project, the first thing is that we usually talk about co-creation with end users. We realized that we need to extend co-creation with all users. For instance, a particular actor that is proven fundamental in our project, and we didn't think of it at the beginning, were installers. So we had to do also co-creation activities with installers to improve the interfaces that we use to communicate with them, to improve the handbooks. We created handbooks, we created videos also for them. The second thing is realizing, so this goes a bit beyond co-creation as is usually understood, as we need a fundamental diplomacy and relational abilities for managing this complex network of actors that need to be coordinated towards the same goal when they have different objectives and different agendas and different styles of thinking and these complexities in 4 different cultural contexts. The third thing is to think of co-creation in a journey, and maybe different activities and different things need to be done at each step. So we differentiated between recruitment, onboarding. Onboarding is the stage where users have to provide their information so that we qualify them for eligibility in the project, sign the terms and conditions. This was at the beginning also overlooked, and then we realized that we were losing many participants at this stage. So we again co-created interfaces and improved the system to make it more user-friendly for users throughout the onboarding stage. And then participation, where we notice, and of course it's normal that users tend to lose the thrive and participation. They maintain participation for a very short window, and then you have to make the most of their attention for the time that you can grab it. We also realized that we have to extend the notion of less capital. I don't know if you are familiar with the notion of less capital. As it was defined, it also considered assets, but we realized that we have to extend that with capabilities and attitudes, and these are also part of the flex capital. And we realized that it's very difficult to target people that do not have flex capital. So archetyping or segmenting for users with high flex capital and being able to portray what flex capital means, this complex notion of flex capital is also a key learning that we got from the project. And we found that the important breaks for participating throughout the 3 stages are emotional. So the first one is stress, anticipated anxiety. That's the main reason for not wanting to enter the project and not wanting to go through all the stages. Is the perceived anxiety, the complexities in all the process. So people feel overwhelmed, and because they don't perceive much value, they are reluctant to engage. And this is a problem if we want to decarbonize the electricity system, because we know that we need flexibility for that. So we have to appease anxiety, and then we also change throughout the project with this main goal: appeasing anxiety, appeasing stress. And we also found, and I think other projects will talk about that intrinsic motives are not enough. So at the beginning, we started targeting those that were more environmentally committed, because we thought that intrinsic motivation would be the silver bullet, but eventually it resulted that it's not. So we think that we have to balance this intrinsic motivation with extrinsic, providing incentives of different kinds to ensure engagement, even engagement in the co-creation activities, and not only in the project. So,
yeah, to conclude a little bit one more time the theory that I was trying to present, Marin told that one of the lessons of the project was that the figure of the installers also should be considered during the co-creation process. But also speaking about the demo manager, sometimes they're playing super central role in the project, and I think that we have this need to just to rethink the centrality of the presence of the demo manager in all the project, and to move towards the more intuitive digital services or applications, so that the users do not have so much anxiety, and the demo manager is not so involved in all the processes happening in the demo sites. Also, as I told, in the pretty sophisticated technological sector as the energy flexibility transition, we need to rethink a little bit the process of co-creation, not only basing our intentions on the co-creation of the interfaces, but also thinking about the co-creation of the value and value propositions that should accompany always the creation and iterations of the interfaces themselves. So, and probably as the conclusion, as a proposal to think, will be this ideal model of the engagement politics, of the engagement strategy, to combine the intuitively created interfaces, digital interfaces that the users are using every day, with the probably non-intrusive education, digital education of the users, or probably with these value creation practices, also basing our attention on the users.
So thank you very
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mamen and Joanna, for keeping the time to 10 minutes. We will go more in details during the roundtable discussion. So if you have any questions, please use the slide, or actually we can share this code. We are going to share it now. It's here. So you can scan this code. I hope you are able to from your phones, and you can pop, especially the online participants, you can use this to ask your questions, and we will try to address them later on. So in the meantime, I will present the Accept project. Yes. So now representing the Accept project is Pablo Barrachina from My Energia, which is a Spanish energy retailer based in the south of Spain, in Murcia. He's project manager there, and they are leading one of the pilot sites at this project. So welcome, and I think good luck with the presentation.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. As Laura has said, my name is Pablo Barrachina. I'm project manager at MIW Energia, and we, along La Solar, Energy Cup, we are demo leaders of the Spanish pilot site. Accept project has 16 partners led by Hypertech, and their main objective is to empower the energy communities to participate in the energy transition. Okay, you can go. Okay, we have 3 technical and technological objectives. First, we want to develop tools that could help energy communities and residential sector to participate in the energy and flexibility markets. Also, the second one is that we want to create a citizen digital twin, so we can have more insights about the way they consume, and also for demand forecasting. And finally, what we want to yeah, no, the previous one. Yeah, sorry. We want to create a secure and interoperable digital toolset that would help the participation in the energy transition. But not only that, we want to have this human-centric approach. So what we want to is use this citizen engagement and this co-creation to achieve several things. We want to create services, energy and non-energy services, and business models that could help these residential energy communities to participate in the market. We want also to identify which drivers and incentives can get this user getting engaged, so we can learn from it. And finally, we want to validate these services we are developing in 4 European countries. Okay. Okay, so doesn't matter. Okay, for us, we really value the user engagement and co-creation. So we developed a 3-step approach for that. The first one was create awareness, because we want the users to know about energy consumption, the energy system, demand response, flexibility. All these terms are difficult for them. So they need to understand what is that. They need to understand why they need to participate on that, and how can they benefit from that participation. Okay, so once we have created this awareness, we want to start with the co-creation activities. In that sense, we are using this co-creation to develop our tool, the tool that the users are going to use. So in that sense, we can apply the user needs to our tool. So it will increase the possibility for potential replication and the way they can use it. And once we have these co-creation activities, we need to continue this interaction. It's not like, okay, the co-creation is finished. As Mamen said, this is a journey. So, what we need is to keep up the momentum and continue this interaction with the users. Mainly, in our case, we are getting feedback through surveys, questionnaires, in order to improve our solution. So, for our project, we have 4 pilots. One in Murcia, in Spain, one in Culemborg, in the Netherlands, one in Asprospitia, in Greece, and the final one in, Capricia, in Switzerland. Sorry. Okay, next one. Again, and the hard ones, not when they are presenting the
No, but I
pilots.
think it's because they don't have the front side in
Yes,
this,
for
in
sure,
this
for sure.
context.
Okay, now we're going to talk about our main co-creation activities. Our main co-creation activities was, as I said before, the involvement of the users during the development of the IoT tools. In our case, the Citizen app or CIAP. So for that sense, the main actors here from the consortium was the pilot leaders, but they have the support, especially from the social science and humanities partners, leading engagement and these living lab activities that are University of Cork, UCC, and Smart Innovation Norway, and also from the technology developers of the project, mainly THERF, that is the one in charge of this SIA. So for that sense, we prepare a lot of documentation, but we delivered two important documents to the users. The first one was a consent form, because before that, GDPR, you need to have their consent for, the use of the data. And also, we gave them a brief explanation, a brief document explaining what the purposes of the ACCEPT project and also about this user testing. So these were the, no, not yet. Now, okay, it's one. Thank you. Okay, what I was doing. Okay, so also there were some discussion guide handed over from these co-creation partners that support us and that explain how to carry out the interviews with some notes and so on. And finally, the co-creation activity itself consisted of interviews one-to-one between the pilot leaders and the users. So we could get through a survey, very simple, we could get this feedback that we will use, this feedback about the design, functionalities of the C app. So we can use that feedback to improve our tool. We also use a system usability scale, so we can have, what is a quantitative approach. Okay. Well, the main results of this.
No, sorry.
No? You translate it?
No.
Yeah. 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 Whatever. So the main results, as you cannot see there yet. Next one. Well, at least we have some. Okay, now you can see at least on the right side. After this co-creation activity, we found out that they liked the most was the main dashboard when they could get information about their consumption, their production. Also, they like a lot the graph where they could see the consumption of the different devices. But there were things that they didn't like that much. For instance, they thought that community tools, when you can see how are their involvement, was a bit, not so clear. And also the analytic graph was too complex for them. Also, they didn't like the lack of customization because they couldn't change the language. Of course, that is already solved. And for instance, change the measurement units. So after these results, we obtained, I think, almost a 60%. Hope we can improve. We got some, useful outputs. For instance, the main and direct, benefit is that we have used this feedback to improve our CIAP. Also, that will, create a tailor-made tool that adapt to the user needs. And finally, as we have used this system usability scale, what we can do is now, track the improvement of the tool, because we are going to use a similar, or the same scale in later stages. Okay, this is the tools and platforms that we have used for the user engagement. We have used Miroboard mainly for the development of this co-creation activity and for the analysis of the results. We also have used brochures and printed materials to inform the users about the project, also this energy, flexibility, all these terms. And finally, questionnaires and surveys, for getting this feedback. But of course, the most important tool for us is the human interaction. Due to COVID at the beginning, we have to delay some of these living labs and these contacts. But right now, thanks to a more relaxed situation, now we can finally meet the users in person, and that really helped for the engagement of the users. Okay. Now, this is one. As I said before, this is a three-way, approach. We start with the early engagement, when we raise awareness and also recruit the users. We continue with this solution co-creation, and we continue with this, keeping this interaction. So we want to keep the user engaged and active in the project. So from this process, we have learned a few things. Okay. The first one is not a good thing. It's an issue that we have to overcome. It was some hesitation on the citizens to participate in this project and in this co-creation. Okay, why? Because there's a lack of awareness. They don't exactly know how the energy system, electricity system works. They don't know anything about demand response. They don't know anything about flexibility. In our case, they knew about energy community, so that's a good thing. So that's something we have to transmit, that information. Also, they have limited understanding about how they can, contribute to, improve their energy consumption, reduce it, reduce their energy bills, and how these kind of tools can help them. Also, there's a lack of incentives for their participation. So what I'm going to get from this participation? That's something. And the final one is a lack of trust, because users are really afraid of their electricity bills because they don't understand them. They also kind of, technology averse, because in our case, there are a lot of middle to old age people, and some of them retired. So talking about mobile apps is not their thing. So we need to work on that. So the second one. So as I said, we have to fight against this issue, and we use several tools and techniques. And okay, this is some lesson learned. For instance, we have to create the trust. So we work through the demo leaders. These demo leaders also introduce these social science and humanities partners, so they can start, trusting the whole consortium. Okay. Also, you have to create effective communication material. I mean, through brochure, through info campaigns, so they can understand in layman terms what are you trying to transmit to them. They have to really understand them. And also, we may give them access to our web-based application in a really, the earliest stage possible, so they could start working on that, giving their feedback, so they feel also involved in this project. And we also use simple tools to get their feedback. I mean, it's like only surveys with a person that is talking to you, and using this scale that is quite clear, quite simple to replicate. And the final learning point, yes, to summarize our experience and for me to end this speech. Okay, co-creation is hard. I mean, you have to, as I said before, you have to fight some things. And also there's, communication and knowledge gap that you have to overcome. But nevertheless, is very important because this is the way that the users can really get engaged in the project. They can provide you with valuable feedback that would, as I said before, would allow you to create a tailor-made solution that not only would work for that users, because it has much more chances for replicability. And finally, this we talked before, this is very important to create some incentives, because at the beginning, they don't know what are they getting. So you need something for them to really buy in since the beginning. You can create incentive, just explain that you are going to make their house smart, maybe some bonus or, a reduction in their energy tariff. So they feel from the beginning that this is something that would help them. After the project is finished, hopefully, they will see that this is beneficial even without those incentives. And I think that's it for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Pablo. Besides the technical problems, there always needs to be some. The learning points are very insightful, especially last year we've been collaborating and mostly we discussed about our common struggles. It's good to start having learning points and then later on draw recommendations from this. So now going on to our next speaker, representing the HESTIA project, where I'm also involved. We have from Aalborg University, Angeliki Ageli. She's a postdoctoral researcher and also an architect. She's working on sustainability transition projects with a practice theory and participatory approach. She's leading the user engagement work package in HESTIA. So now I let the expert speak about
Thank you, Laura. So yeah, so perhaps I will skip a long introduction on HESTIA. So my name is Angeliki. I'm leading the engagement package and the strategy for participatory engagement in the project. So yeah, broadly, our project is building a platform for household demand response. However, in the project from the beginning, we had an inbuilt idea that the users will be in the heart of that platform, and then we will lead the process through that. So we have 3 pilot locations, one in the Netherlands, in Voorhout, one in Perhida, in Sardinia, and then one near Paris, in an area called Calmel-Claudel in France. And so just before we go into the specifics of the project, I thought that it's nice to kind of zoom out and look at co-creation and what is its significance. So it's actually the idea that co-creation is important because one size does not fit all. And that's not just with technologies, but in general, when we design something new for communities, we need to consider that context. And the other thing is that we're focused too much on solutions, but actually we need to involve people in the making of the problem, in the definition of the problem. So co-creation is a really good way to kind of move back and think it's not just the solution, but also what is the problem? Ask people what the problem is. And another kind of starting point is this idea that communities, because they contain people, are diverse. So we need to understand that it's not just consensus, it's not just making agreement in the community, but also focusing on that difference, on the diversity. So when we started with HESTIA, the things on the left were some of the project objectives that were written on the project. So to create this cooperative DR strategy and to involve residents. And our strategy therefore sort of started to build this, but we had a slightly different perspective. We didn't look at users as individuals that make rational choices, but we looked at their everyday practices. So it's not who people are, but it's what people do. And this practice perspective helped us understand and build both the kind of practice, but also the collective action of communities. And so the other thing was that we wanted to involve the consortium partners and as other people mentioned, it's not just the users, but it's also the people in the project, which involves us as researchers, and try to understand how we can incorporate this. And that was very hard. So really we tried to bridge this idea of professional expertise with people's experiential or lived experience of the issue. And then, okay, we've done a lot of interactions, we designed things, the typical things, participatory workshops. We did actually home tours, and initially we did them online because COVID hit us pretty much as soon as we started. So we wanted people to take us around their homes and show us what they do, how they do it. Those that already had some energy technologies or, photovoltaics, or how they monitor their energy. And then we also did interviews, and then we developed also some tools in the beginning to start seeing how we can understand, how we can communicate with people online through visual things, so people could drag and drop things to tell us their daily routines. And then in the consortium, we started to slowly integrate some workshops between us to discuss different issues that came up in the project. Just some ideas of and how it mapped out. So that was a pilot in Sardinia. So that was the first actual workshop that we did, and we ran it as it's a small community in the mountains in Sardinia. They're very proud of this project, and they're also part of other EU projects. So they want to become pioneers in demand response and energy community. So nearly the whole village sort of turned up, and it was a big event. So we did this workshop, and we asked people to map their daily activities, and then we asked them to kind of tell us how their energy curve went. Not based on real data, but their perception of that, which was also interesting to see how people did and, the way that they perceived energy consumption. But we also run specifically women-only groups, because we realized that there is a big sort of gendering between the practices that happens in the household and the monitoring and control of energy technology. So the people that monitor the platform would not be the ones that go and do the task. So we needed to speak to both sides, and we definitely needed to speak to the women in Bermuda that seem to be taking a disproportionate load of the household labor. And then in the Netherlands, we did a lot of role-playing games, we did board games, we asked people to be part of the idea of when they generate energy, how do they feel about the collectivity, how do they like the idea of sharing, and through there, a lot of different things emerged that we hadn't actually predicted. And then, again, a women-only kind of group in the Netherlands. But this time, again, we try to understand in different aspects of control of technologies, and in what way the kind of women perceived that the task was done by them or their partner, and then compare things between. And then finally in France, we ran again a couple of different activities, the idea of a board game with community energy, and then also a card game in which people were challenged to think about two things. One, about their heating practices, like lowering temperatures, or how they would do it in their home, and what are the advantages or disadvantages, and also different ways of reimagining cooking and eating, because these are practices that are interconnected. They're quite difficult to move in time, so they're not so flexible. So we try and see what were the reactions. And what's worked well? Well, first of all, workshops. It's quite, I think most of you will probably agree with workshops generally go well, because there's high energy, people participate, they're happy and they collaborate. However, what we found through this is that people would rather collaborate rather than compete. So although in our platform we had this idea of gamification and what your neighbors do, you could do better, people told us that they don't want to do that. They want to know what their neighbors are doing, but they don't want to compete with them, which was quite an interesting insight. These co-creation activities helped us to build the energy communities, because they were newly built energy communities, so people came together, and it was also during COVID, so it helped the social aspect as well. And then it has helped us identify these issues of diversity, gender, for example. We didn't start with having a clear idea of how gender shapes technologies and VR in general, but we encountered a lot of this through co-creation. And then not so positive things. COVID, as I mentioned, broke us in half, and it was really hard to reach the pilots. We had communities that responded really well to this, and communities that did not. And of course, this is a challenge. Every community is different, but at the same time, sorry, at the same time, the expectations varied. In the beginning, there was higher enthusiasm, and then in order to keep them and to continue this excitement, and that's both for partners and participants in the project. And one other thing which relates most on our side, let's say the analysis and the interpretation of the data, we get a massive load of data from co-creation activities. And sometimes you are kind of overwhelmed and you don't know what to do with this. And that's also an important part to know. Yeah, maybe actually, I'll go first to this, the tools and the platform. So the tools we use, I put them in two different sections. One is the face-to-face tools. So participatory workshops, we use games in the workshops, role-playing games, cards and props. And then we also designed a template that we distributed in the local partners, in the pilot partners, in order to make sense of the data again. So how do we evaluate it? We try to keep it in a form that it will be easy for us to evaluate. And then on the virtual side, we used, co-creation with Miro, like many of you. And then some visual methods. So that's the example I was telling you that people could, it's a very, very manual way, but we just wanted to get people to show us things that were easy to identify, different practices of their everyday routines. And then we go back into so our key learnings. Okay, so co-creation is hard, like Pablo said, but it also requires to be built into the project, written in the project, but appreciated and valued by not only the participants, but the project partners, EU officers, and everyone that is involved in order to be successful. As I said, expectations is very hard to manage sometimes, what communities expect, or maybe what the partners expect. Maybe it's too high and you can't keep it, or maybe it's too low and you need to reach up. It's also a very, very time and resource consuming task. And sometimes we all wonder, why do we do it? Is it worth doing? Yeah, that's a big debate. And then co-creation also can kind of help us to uncover issues, for example, like I said, diversity issues, gender issues, but also the most importantly, the tacit know-how of people, the way they perform activities that sometimes they cannot put in words. But in the workshop, you can actually see, because it's more collective. And finally, it can support diversity and inclusivity, but we need to be quite careful not to generalize or to take one thing that happened once and apply it to everything else. And so that's it from me. And also, of course, my colleague Martin from Junwork, which is another partner in the project, assisted with this presentation. So thank you. Thank you, Adeliki. So now we go to the IFLEX project. Here representing IFLEX, we have Luis Birch. He's a senior consultant in INGET's APS, not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. She's leading the communication dissemination activities in the project, and she's also very involved in the user and stakeholder engagement activities. So,
thank you. Thank you. Yes, so we'll go straight to the IFLEX project. So a key objective is, and we are probably at a different starting point than the rest of the project you've heard, because we have a more shaped concept that we built co-creation and user engagement of. So the IFLEX project main aim is to empower people, mainly residential consumers and prosumers, in demand response. And we do this by developing an intelligent software assistant which helps with energy management at home. It helps with the flexibility management. So when you participate in either implicit demand response programs or explicit demand response programs, it makes sure to optimize on behalf of your wishes and needs. So in terms of comfort, in terms of if it's environment concerns you have, if it's money you want to save. So the IFLEX assistant key objective is to work on behalf of your wishes. And obviously this flexibility is then used to benefit the power grid as well. So it's a balance and it should benefit both sides. This is the starting point for engagement and cooperation. I think this is also very important to establish for any project. What is it you want to use the user engagement co-creation for? What is your starting point? I think that's very important because we've seen in many of your projects, you start at a very high level and we are starting at a level where we know roughly the concept that we want to explore. So the idea of engaging people and co-creating is to frame a good user experience of the IFLEX assistant, its concepts, and also its services. So they're significant because, or user engagement co-creation is significant because you need to have acceptability and sustainability of what you deploy in order for it to be used. And we do it in terms of usage. Can I use it? Is it useful for the task I want to complete? Is it trusted? And also in terms of attractiveness, is it attractive enough for me to go and buy it? So this is something we have to make sure that is seen before. And this is why it's important to engage people. And it also means that involving users means you get fresh insights. You might get insight into stuff that you didn't think of, that are tacit, and you get into, especially at the current situation where energy awareness is changing, you need to be able to understand what people's needs and wishes are, because that will help shape your design and achieve and make sure you continue to achieve a good fit. And it also makes sure that you design for the people you want to target, not just the developers or yourself, even though you can say, well, I'm a consumer, I have needs, and I can build it on my own experience. Yes, you can, but it's also good to have other people's insights. And also basically, and if you do it at an early level, obviously you reduce the risk of developing something and use a lot of resources on something that users won't need or won't use. So this is why it's very important to have user engagement. One example was very simple. You say, well, that's the obvious. Was that we developed a wizard for easy onboarding. This was one of the results from activities that it was important. And I in your REDREAM, you exactly said, well, to have some kind of training that is not intrusive. So here is an example, one example that for people onboarding the IFLEX assistant, because it can be complex, was you had a wizard helping you through the start of the usage. Okay, next slide, please. We have 3 pilot sites in Finland, Slovenia, and Greece. So apartment building in Finland and households and smaller enterprises in Slovenia and Greece. Up to 600 users are involved. We are currently at the 3rd stage, so we have had a pre-pilot and a small-scale pilot. And at this stage, it's been friendly users. So we are just doing the large, big recruitment for this last year as we speak. So we have some results, but we haven't in some of the pilots, the IFLEX assistant still needs to be deployed and actually felt and used before we can have the final results from here. But the user engagement we've done so far was workshops, interviews, and questionnaires. So again, because we focus on the usability and usage and user experience of the IFLEX assistant, this was our main focus. But we also looked at the broader picture of demand response and how you want and would like to participate, and also the acceptance of the concept of IFLEX, that you offer your flexibility in return for something else. And we also looked into use cases and incentives as well. So what does it take for you to do it and use it? Here's an example from a workshop using the World Cafe structure in Slovenia. So here it was mainly the use cases and also the IFLEX assistant look. At that time, we only had mock-ups, and also discussing what kind of motivations people have for participating. Okay, next one, please. So the result, as I said, we currently out rolling the IFLEX assistant at the current pilot sites. But you can see one move is going from the storyboard to an actually interface. We have 2 different interfaces. One different for Finland because it's at building level that the whole apartment building is participating in demand response. And in Slovenia and Greece, we have another interface targeting households. So what we can say, however, is that we have created awareness. And I think this is very crucial because that's what we try to do in our everyday life. It's also to create awareness. That's the first step, as somebody said. I think it was Pablo. participated in the Finnish pilot. They did a questionnaire for the apartment residents, and they said that they definitely had created bigger awareness of energy consumption, and they were very keen on continuing this after the project to have insight into their own data, which makes sense, and their willingness to participate in energy flexibility beyond the project was definitely positive. In the Slovenian pilot, they tried to get the insight from people also throughout the installation process, and had a review on, because as I think it was you mentioned, you mentioned the fact of having different stages of co-creation. So not only engaging people, but make sure that the whole journey creates a good user experience. And the installation process was sort of a way of us examining, well, they have, those who install the equipment have the insight, they would get a lot of feedback from people. How can we use this feedback to also feed into the design of the IFLEX system? So the installation process and general support was satisfactory. So it's looking at all the steps in the journeys as well, which makes sense for evaluating the IFLEX system. So yeah, so key learnings. So again, we had a strategy to deploy a three-stage approach, increasing the user engagement as we went along. And in Slovenia, it's been based on existing customer base. So we have sort of recruited from pilot clusters or the pilot managers' existing customer base, which has made it easier to approach people and recruit people. And also the pilots have been very focused on identifying eligible participants. So if you throw it out, you will expect to have a lot of answers. So they're trying to sort of steer it into making it more concrete and saying, where is the need? And a great benefit is that then you will actually accommodate the need of the system as well. You need that balance. Obviously, people's motivations and needs are important, but there's also need of the system. So identifying eligible participants makes sure that you can also target your incentives much better. You make sure that people, well, in Slovenia, for example, they're interested in the cost savings. Give me more money. So yes, they actually had a reduction on their bill because they participate, and they also have almost 24-hour support from the company, because this is what they would like. So obviously you have an opportunity to design proper incentives, because you know, okay, I'm targeting people with heat pumps. So obviously, what incentives could people with heat pumps? What are their thoughts behind their mindset? And again, I think it was Pablo said, the human touch absolutely drives recruitment, because you get to put a face on people, and obviously they already know, and if they trust the company they buy their electricity from, that trust can be gained and used for participation in a project. But the personalized face-to-face approaches, they do increase participation rate, because you can have your anxieties out, and you know you can contact if there are any doubts, because obviously there are concerns about installing sensors, and the more you install, the more concerns. So obviously this also is a key point. And if I take last one, yeah. So what have you used so far? So we've done a lot of visualization, video and mock-ups, because it's easier to explain and also discuss a user interface when you have something visible. We use the wall capping method, and again drawing and making sure that the conversations were then easier to do. And then we've done some surveys using customized questions. So often these surveys, they are shaped by, you know, you have software people wanting to know something, and the university researchers to know something else, and then we've used different customized questions for these two different surveys. We also have feedback in the application. So for the Finnish side, people can report back on their comfort, because they're regulating. They're using the thermal storage for demand response, and people can then provide feedback. Well, I'm too cold now, or I'm too hot now. And we also plan on having an in-application for the remaining interfaces, where you will somehow be able to provide feedback on the app and the user interface. So that was all from me. Okay.
Thank you very much, Luis. So now, last but not least, we will have the presentation of the Sender project. Here we have William Tronsen. He is a researcher at the Norwegian University for Science and Technology, and he's leading the co-creation activity. So please go on.
Thank you. Okay. To say 2 words about the Sender project to start, it's of course a project focused on developing smart grid technologies and fostering user flexibility, but this has a clear focus on the end users right from the start. So it means that the methodology of the project really is trying to implement analysis and definitions of user requirements before going ahead with the technology development. So next slide, please. So these are the Sender core innovations. Just to take you through them quickly, it's the virtual, first of all, the virtual thermal energy storage. It's supposed to optimize the thermal energy storage devices such as heat pumps and water heaters. And there's also a vehicle-to-grid technology with smart charging. A dedicated gateway called the Sender box is implemented in every pilot participant's houses. It's supposed to communicate between the distributed energy resources that are installed, sort of like photovoltaics and the battery storage, and also there's the front-end application, or just the app. So that's going to sit between the end users and the markets, where individual demand response settings, such as the hot water demand, the indoor temperature, and such, can be accessed by the user. And finally, there's a whole suite of sensors that will combine different kinds of sensor data. So there's motion sensor, temperature sensors, air quality sensors, with all the energy data that's being implemented as well. So as you can see here from the slide, in practical terms, we're 15 partners. I think that's the wrong slide. Can you see the next slide, please? Yes. And we'll go back to the last one afterwards. 15 partners working across several countries. We have 3 demo sites highlighted in the little red circles, administered by the local grid operators and research companies. So there's one in Spain being run by ADEE and the energy cooperative Alginet. And there's one in Finland, which is administered by the energy company Vare, and also the research organization VTT. And finally, there's one in Austria, which is being run by the energy agency Weitz. So the last slide, please. Okay, excellent. This is the 5 main use cases that we have developed due to co-creation in the Sender project. And as you can see here, they are at the bottom here, the residential demand response. So that's something that users are supposed to be able to do. Also, they're supposed to be able to maximize the use of any kind of renewable energy source that they have access to. Of course, they're supposed to be able to minimize their electricity bill, and they also we're going to give them an ability to do remote monitoring and control of devices in the household. And finally, also the toughest nut, I think, to crack, the peer-to-peer energy trading. So don't even ask me how that's going. So next, there we go. Okay, so let's talk about recruitment. So in the Sender project, we could say that the co-creation phase, at least the co-creation workshop, is sort of finished. So we're done, and we use that to create the use cases, and now we're sort of in doing a user engagement mode. So first off, so they can be summed up, I guess, in 3 phases. We have the recruitment phase, which is dedicated to dissemination of information, materials, events, workshops, individual energy counseling, surveys. The second phase focuses on social pressure. So we're trying to highlight some positive contributions that people can make by participating and doing sort of the right thing and so forth. So involving people in the actual rollout and installation activity, as well as doing follow-ups by phone. And the final phase, focusing on persistence, involving, among the other things, setting up of an online forum, signing on on beta users, arranging exhibitions and seminars, and also measures to be able to show people the impact of their demand response actions, in order to show them how it matters in the big picture. So To say something about the user engagement lessons. This is not really the, I think, okay. Yeah, right, so the last one, yes, thanks. The co-creation process in the project worked like this. So we first convened like a co-creation steering group with all the stakeholders inside and the internal stakeholders of the project. The technical parts of the project was included there together with the end user from the demo sites in order to sort of uncover the needs and the capabilities of the project. We then outlined the scenarios that describe our use cases in sort of a narrative form. So basically we made these little stories based on the use cases, and they were presented in the workshops that we held at each demo site. And this produced a lot of good feedback that was able then to provide the basis for the final set that we had of use cases. And the lesson we learned there is, of course, that spending a lot of time early in the project, I think this was mentioned as well, developing the use cases we needed in order to actually do the user engagement work. This really also benefited the rest of the project. So it's been mentioned already, co-creation isn't just between the users and the project, but also sort of between other parts in the network as well. And the technical development phase sort of gains this good kind of head start in terms of getting good and useful use cases in at the bottom, but it also brings together all the different stakeholders in the project from an early stage. Even though I think there is some danger to involving regular people sort of into these high-level technical discussions, which I think was also mentioned earlier. Okay, so previous slide, yeah. Then I would say something about these engagement strategies. I think they can be summed up in 3 phases. No, that was not the one. Here we go. Some lessons from our recruitment process thus far. So I think we've been doing these recruitment stuff for like a year. And some of the sort of central lessons would be to have the next steps always, the main concept always well-defined the moment you start with the active recruitment, because people will lose interest really quickly if they see the information that's not really clear enough. And also when providing information, explaining the process in an easily understandable manner, sort of in the terms of the user journey, thinking about that, and providing contact information all the time and ways to get for them to get in touch with projects to deal with any kind of doubt at any time. Yeah, so also then making use of social media posts and other actions there, identifying the social media platform that there are several of them, and some of them are better suited to reach the different kind of target groups, which if you do a little bit of customer segmentation, you'll quickly see that you have very different kind of users that you want to reach. And you want to make sure to translate, this is a no-brainer, I think, but you need to translate communication contents. So we're in different kinds of countries, and especially the app, it needs to be in the local language, and this makes users much more happy with using it. So furthermore, organize events and workshops related to demand response and energy efficiency, sort of to present the project and get people to enroll. And also do follow-up meetings among the partners in the project. So this was also mentioned, I suppose, with the installers, for instance, to ensure that the targeted audience is sort of diverse enough so you can keep up with the segmentation and you don't lose special kinds of users due to certain sort of gender issues or age issues. So, and finally, we've been organizing beta tests to detect possible failures, and this can solve a lot of problems. And to find sort of areas that need to improve or be optimized. Yeah. Okay, so I think this is the last slide. Next one. Last one. I've been uploading my presentation several times today, so I think maybe it was lost in transit somewhere. Anyways, apart from the stuff that I already mentioned, workshops, the little narratives that we made based on the use cases, the workshops we did, where we also did the Miro boards, creating a channel through social media platforms for indirect communications is very useful. And also a platform where you can reach users with sort of updates and videos and information materials. And we're also working on defining a list of quick solutions that people can, like the most likely errors that'll pop up in their homes after we've installed the technologies, and then this will sort of help people be able to solve these little problems themselves, and that in itself can actually support people and empower people to make them feel more confident about the project. So yeah, I think that's it for me. Thank you.
So now for the roundtable discussion, I welcome all the speakers to bring their chairs in the front. I think it's going to be better. This way also for the slide.
I need to get to the line.
Oh, what? Extra, we have one chair for the
No, it's for me.
Yeah.
I need some water.
So we have prepared a few questions that we thought were relevant, but first I wanted to ask if there's any question from the audience that maybe it's easier to address directly. Otherwise, we go into the questions we had prepared. No questions? Okay. So then we will go into some of these questions have been partially addressed during the presentations, but maybe now you can give more in detail hints. So the first question is, what were the key challenges that you faced in engaging users in co-creation process, and how did you overcome them? And following up questions, like besides the challenges you face, what are the challenges that you are expecting to have in the next steps of the project? So maybe Pablo, you want to start? Or
Okay,
yeah.
I will start. Okay, we have talked about the lack of knowledge and all this stuff, so I think this is all already covered. But this is something that we found is the time constraint. Okay, we want to engage them at early stages, but then you have to show them something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we want to the users to help us with the co-creation of this, in our case, this citizen app. You need to show them something. So you need to give the developers time to start creating that, at least these mockups, at least this early beta version. So then if you want to do this, okay, get this feedback and improve your tool, you need time. And okay, European project, you have not that much time, and you need to, fulfill your schedule, your milestones. So this is a tricky balance. So you need to be agile in this case, but this is a real challenge. We were trying to, of course, you cannot address everything, but at least try to address as much as possible. And finally, another challenge is just, as we said before, the early buy-in. So in our case, what we did was to create like a focus group in each demo case. So there were like these friendly users that you can really contact them in a short time, and they can react and they can give you this first feedback that will help you. That's for me.
Thank you. I think, William, you wanted to complement these.
Sure. I actually wanted to say exactly the same thing, because we were doing this co-creation, and I was doing this co-creation work package, and I'm like, okay, so how are we going to do co-creation? Usually when you do co-creation, you have, like, this is Apple or Nike or something, they already have a product and they let people play around with it. So they get a lot of information then, and then they reiterate their product, but we weren't able to do it because we didn't have the actual technologies implemented yet. But so, I mean, and then it is what it is. You get to do hypothetical co-creation, sort of. You make like we did when we make these narratives and we sort of tell them little fairy tales. This is how your life will be once these technologies are there, and then what do you think about that? So, but of course, this isn't. Then you're not really co-creating the thing that you're supposed to co-create. You're co-creating the little story, aren't you? And the story, so that's. But of course, then the challenge is trying to make the story. And of course, you can't just show them the use case because this is very technical. So you need to translate it into something that they can engage with. So you're sort of getting further and further away from what you're actually supposed to be doing. But I think I'd say you get a lot of information still, and it does really make the use cases more robust. And even though we're not sort of in co-creation mode anymore, I think we're still in that mode where we listen to feedback from end users. But I think challenging. It's going to be challenging to implement. I mean, a lot of stuff that users want and they don't want, and maybe the also in terms of co-creation. If you want to do co-creation, you have to be flexible in terms of what your product is. And maybe when you're in an EU project and it's like you have these resources, and then this is the app you get then. So so maybe that's also going to be quite challenging. So.
Yeah, this is very linked to, I think, Alec was mentioning about this open-endedness of the project, how limited budget, the specific results. So we have to live with this. I think, Luis, you wanted to.
I think there can also be, if you look at it from the organizational point of view, there are also organizational challenges. So obviously we have people who have companies that have customers. So they're very careful of not presenting something that will be a problem with expectation, etc. They need to be clear on what it is they can offer. So can we offer what we say we can offer? If I say a cost saving, well, we can't give you a real cost saving. So they are very careful, and this can also sort of postpone engagement because you have to align with your own organization first.
Thank you. So do you want to, any of the other projects want to add anything on this point? Maybe we go to another question, which is following up on this. So what do we recommend? What advice do we give to other projects who are planning to implement these user engagement and cooperation activities to develop their products, their services? What can we suggest them for upcoming projects being developed now? Maybe Carmen, Mami, you want to go ahead with this question?
Well, in our case, we also work with energy communities, small energy communities, and we found the power of leaders. So that would be one recommendation, to identify the networkers in each community, because someone said that they have to trust the solution. In our experience, they have to trust the person proposing this, and then they are blind to the rest of it. So if they trust the person communicating the project, so spending time finding who are the leaders in these groups, in these communities, is an important thing. It's an important doorway for them to enter with confidence and enthusiasm. But I also think, I was wondering if you, for instance, pay, do you offer, so I understand that in Italy you didn't need to, but in other cases, did you pay for participating in cooperation? We found a very huge difference between the first stage of the project and now. So now we are struggling for them to
come back.
Yeah.
No, we didn't use incentives in that
But did
sense.
Did you do 2 rounds or just 1 round?
For workshops, we did, we did various cycles. The first one was a big one, and then it was smaller focus groups, the women focus groups. But now we will be going back to the communities. But I think it depends very much on the community and the reason. I think that was a very motivated community. So in fact, we even push people away rather than. But I think in other cases, yes, in another project.
Because maybe this is something that we should contemplate while doing budgets, that sometimes we need to envisage some budget for enticing participation, that we cannot expect that people are going to give us 10 hours or 20 hours of the time for free or for nothing.
Yeah.
Maybe that we sometimes, I think we don't realize that sometimes we are putting too much burden on the shoulders of people, maybe.
Yeah.
in the bridge working group, it was mentioned maybe also some efforts can be made before the project starts to have these people engaged already, who are those leaders who can you be dealing with during the project, but also this means budget that needs to come from these organizations before the funding is coming. So it's tricky.
In the center project, we're going to implement a lot of technologies anyway, right? So a promise of, we're going to upgrade your water heater, or in order for us to be able to run the pilot like we want to, you need to have this technology. So that's actually an incentive as well, though. So
Because you're giving them for free.
yeah, because we need them to run the pilot. So we need to implement.
But we are not.
Yeah, we need water heaters, we need heat pumps, we need EV
And
charging.
you give the heat pump, or the person already had the heat pump?
If they already have it, we need to find out if it works with the systems that we have. Otherwise, they need another one, or maybe they won't be able to participate. So, but this is something to.
Of course, you give
And,
it
yeah.
away, then that's incentive.
But brand new water heater, that's excellent, right? Because they're expensive. So.
I love it. I mean,
But the installment is
in our case, we, as an electricity retailer, we offer them a discount. In this case, we are not a retailer, but I mean, we offer them maybe a breakfast or something.
Yeah, okay.
But not really, real incentive. But what you said about identifying the leaders is also great. Not also, for their participation, but also when you are recruiting the users. I know the case in other project, they say, okay, if that guy is participating, I'm in. And that's
So looking at ambassadors.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Invest in your resources in this
Yeah.
network
Look
of
who's-
ambassadors.
Yeah.
Instead of the
Incentives
finances.
to that person.
Yeah, also, I wanted to tackle three things. Speaking about Flex Capital that Mami was mentioning, for example, we have the pretty same situation in Italy. The community is super strong. They were super willing to participate from the beginning, but they were missing resources, so they were not able to participate. They were not eligible for the project. So we need to consider Flex. I think Flex Capital. That I written it down. And also speaking Luis' point about easy onboarding, I think it's super important to think about UX writing of the interfaces. It should be as simple as possible to simplify. So there is this law in UX writing that it should be understood by the school children. So it should be this level of the information for users, not to have they're super educated. Everybody is super aware that they want to participate in the flexibility initiatives, but still they have a lot of anxiety because of the long forms, because of the interfaces that are sometimes not very well translated, or so I think it's super important also. And another point, Angeliki was mentioning COVID, and also we were discussing language thing that, for example, we were using the local researchers net. So we had in Spain we were doing, and still we are doing our own research, and we have 3 different local researchers that are helping us to conduct the research on the language, on the local language, and also it's helping to tackle this big net of inside the consortium that we have.
I mean, in Spain, you totally need to use the local language.
I think also just to add on this, if I can, sorry, it's just not just the language, but also the local societal knowledge. It's
exactly.
like what is
Also,
normal for this community, because it might be completely different from the other community, and
Yeah.
take it for granted.
Dutch people are not the same as Spanish people.
Yeah.
Not to start with regulation.
But we have a question.
Yeah, just to add on this, because I've been working with a few projects that kind of resemble the things that we're saying today. And when it comes to doing the VR, there's like a golden rule, which is like building some kind of application, then taking care of your customers, which is pretty much what we're discussing right now. I'm just wondering if it has ever come up in your discussions, your co-creation sessions, to have interfaces that are not dependent on the screen. So not a smartphone, not a PC, because right now we are overwhelmed with information that are conveyed throughout screens and such. So I'm just wondering, because something that it hasn't come up in the project that I'm following, but it seems like something really new that kind of could spark a few things here and there.
Yeah, I could just say shortly, in the workshops, a lot of people wanted that because I don't want another app. I have to install it. It's going to beep in my pocket, and I have to give my attention to it. We'd rather like have a tactile stuff on the wall or a screen on the wall, but it's fixed and permanent. I don't have to care about it all the time, and it's not following me around. So.
But we found the opposite. They didn't want something in the wall because it was ugly and they didn't want it. So maybe
this is also true.
Yeah, so it depends on.
A lot of people were willing to use mobile apps, no?
Yeah, they wanted a mobile app.
I mean, if you get a mobile app, they may use it. If they have to access through a laptop, not really.
This is also
Even
trouble,
without
like if you have
notification,
several
yeah.
family members who has access to the app and stuff like that.
So like I was referring to like losing a screen completely.
But how can you
Maybe
not
can I go into this? I think you're right, because that's what we've been trying to get to explain the idea that flexibility is not necessarily about the technologies. Flexibility is about the negotiation and the kind of the routines that people have. So what we try to understand is how things are negotiated in the household. So when that new technology or when that existing thing of, oh, we have to do it in a slightly different way, it's not just one thing. It's like if you have to suddenly cook at another time or wash at another time, this is just a whole new world of. So I think you're right, because I think that the idea of flexibility needs to consider those routines that people have and the interconnections they have with other societal rhythms. For example, work times, commuting times, schools, shopping times, and what is available, infrastructural and everything else. So I think it is just.
Yeah, but there are like two ways of doing flexibility now. Explicit. In your project, you do explicit or implicit. So incentive based or price of or hours.
Oh yes, okay. So it's different because we have a pilot that it is on a fixed price at the moment, but then it might go into time of use.
So if we test an algorithm like the one in your project, so the user doesn't have to shift any practice. The algorithm does for them the work. So it's impossible to work without a screen. So you need the screen because you need the sensors and you need the algorithm and you need the Internet of Things. But this is the concept of our project. It's a smart algorithm that does the work on your behalf.
Yeah, I agree. You need some kind of channel, and it's also on the base of transparency, because obviously in the Finnish pilot in IFLEX, it's a building level. So on an everyday basis, nobody in the specific apartment will be able to do anything. But if you don't have a channel where you can see what happens with where you have awareness and you know that you can contact somebody if it's wrong. And whether this is a screen or not doesn't really matter. But I think it's important in terms of transparency, trust, that you need some kind of communication channel. And whether it's a screen or not, if you can find something else, fine. But you need to know that I can always, who can I contact behind the screen or the non-screen? There needs to be some kind, at least for building of trust and transparency and knowing who to contact.
I mean, you could use the no screen with automation, but still you need to say, okay, we are doing this in your home. I mean, in our cases, are dwellings. It's not a building with the general, appliances. No. They are their own dwellings with the only with their HVAC just for them. And all the domestic hot water tank for them. So if you are doing something, even if you do automation, this is the best thing to get this flexibility. You need to at least say, hey, I'm doing this at that time.
Yeah, they need to override it.
Yeah, so
And the panic button, you override the system when it doesn't work.
Because even though people want automation, and they did that with the IFLEX system, can do it automatically based on your needs and preferences. But they need to have that override option. So the control option is so important, both to opt out of the project or to opt out the control, me being in control. That need, it has to be fulfilled at all times, basically.
Yeah, I completely agree. I wasn't.
No, you think of alternatives.
No. I wasn't like going to suggest any kind of full-on automation, because that really doesn't work when you're in your household. I mean, you want to control things. That's a given. But the thing is, I've read it somewhere. I'm not sure if it's going to happen anytime soon, but there is a trend that the big players producing appliances are willing to introduce this kind of interface on their actual appliance. So you will have some kind of feedback saying, if you use your dishwasher now, it's going to cost you something.
That would be great.
But it's still going to be
Yeah, so this is something in between, right? So it's giving you a quick way to know what's going on, and it's giving you the choice.
Sure. Yeah.
Do that or don't.
Well, we have this. This is going to be great. This is one of the things that come up in our research,
Okay.
that they do want this. That say, if you put the washing machine now, it will cost you €5 more than the cycle.
But I think that the challenging here is the issue that maybe we want to also make people think of why they're doing things in the first place. So, for example, do I need to wash 5 times a week? Maybe actually I don't. Maybe I don't need to wash 2 or 1. Or do I need to kind of eat the way I do, or maybe cook too much, or like, so I think it's also this, all these strategies need to include both the technological aspect, which is of course supposed to make our lives easier and quicker and all the rest. But at the same time, I think it's a good time to reflect a little bit back on our society and the level of consumption. Do we need all that consumption? So yeah, it's just, we might not need all of that. It just might be.
It's difficult because we have these 4 archetypes, for example, 4 technical archetypes and 4 archetypes speaking about their awareness. And sometimes people were very aware of the need to change their behavior, but they were not doing anything. They were just aware. That's why I think that we need this to work on this awareness, and also to move towards the automatization of the devices. Probably this is the solution.
Yep.
Thanks for this wonderful discussion. I was just wondering if in any project, did the people you work with actually tested some kind of demand response mechanism or tool? So did they actually turn off the washing machine or?
Yeah,
Yes.
in our case, it's automatized. So we have 2. In the pilots, they do both. They do with a smart plug, so they shift their practices. And they also have a explicit flexibility automatized, where the algorithm switches on and off the stuff according to your preferences. So you define your preferences, and then things are switched on and off depending on the grid needs, running like simulation. And in UK, because the market allows for it, they are actually paid for the flexibility they are providing.
So sometimes it's just regulation of the temperature, for example, in your household. It's like, for example, -1 degree, and
the kilowatts generated are like bought by the aggregator in a simulation of what would happen. So yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then you ask them and get that feedback and.
Yes, I mean, in our case, we control the electric domestic hot water tanks with a smart plug, and with a control device, we control the HVAC. So we can move up or down the temperature depending on mainly the price, because in Spain we have this dynamic tariff. You have an hourly price each hour, so you can move, and you can even do a preheating or pre-cooling the previous hour, so you kind of accumulate this thermal energy. So for the following hours, that there's a spike in price, and that's automatic. You have to, of course, tell the users we're going to do this.
No, we don't, because it's the algorithm that runs on.
Yeah, I mean, but
we tell them at the beginning, not every time.
Yeah, but I mean, in our case, we have the prices 24 hours in advance.
But they say they optimize. In our case, they set the optimization for emissions or for price, and that's it. And then the algorithm optimizes and use the energy when it's cheaper or when it's greener. And we also optimize with the solar panels and the EV, the electrical vehicle charger. We take into account all these things.
The PV production.
And so the algorithm acts on their behalf. Yeah.
And did you take into account also energy efficiency? Like, did they save energy or did they save money?
Yeah, they save money because they optimize. Yeah, that's the main benefit for the user.
Yeah. But the total energy consumption remains basically the same. You just shift it.
Well, this is one thing that we have to study because we expect result effects.
Angeliki just said that maybe they need to see that 5 times to do is too much. But until they don't know how much consumption they do, they cannot say, okay, maybe I can not only shift the consumption, but also reduce it.
But I would say the main focus, at least for Sender, is to, like you said, not actually reduce it, but shift it around, because that's what we need sometimes when we have renewable energy sources and congestion in the grid.
I mean, also in a project, okay, we are focusing on energy communities. So maybe you are just studying how the production of one of the users is a prosumer, but now is not allowed in Spain, but hopefully soon. We could just use the peer-to-peer sharing of energy. So at the end of the day, it's not that they are reducing their consumption, but they are using renewable energy. So that's a benefit.
So we actually ran out of time. We had many more questions to go, but we didn't have
Tomorrow
time.
in the coffee.
So there's many networking time
And next
for
year.
this. I wanted to just coming back and to conclude the session, that coming back to the question about recommendations, we are trying to analyze these commonalities, common issues we have in the projects, which lessons we're learning, also considering the different contexts. We have also seeing differences in pilot size within the projects, but also the different approaches that are being followed and strategies. So we will be delivering a white paper with a few recommendations based on what we are learning in these projects. Of course, like cannot be applied. Generally, we are talking about this case-to-case situation. No solution fits all, but hopefully it will be useful for further research projects and actually implemented projects that can bring benefits in this sense, in demand response energy communities. So hopefully this will come soon and you will be able to benefit from it. So please.
And we need someone to review it.
Yes, actually, yes. So you're welcome to review it and see if there's anything else you would like to see in that document. So with this, I conclude. Please feel free to reach any of us for any questions, and we'll be free to talk to you during the networking sessions in the next coming days. So thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.